Hi everybody, what's up? My name is Juan, I am just one reader and I'm here with another recent reads. Today I will be discussing books numbers 12, 13, and 14 that I've read in 2018, and those are The Secret History, The Trouble with Goats and Sheep, and 100 Years of Solitude. Now, this is probably going to be a very quick recent reads episode, considering that I have posted separate individual book reviews for both The Secret History and 100 Years of Solitude. So I'm just going to mention those very briefly. First up, we have The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Oh man, I really think that in my review of this, I conveyed, or at least I tried to convey, the kind of internal state that I was in because of this book. I think this book is so great on a technical writing standpoint. I mean, the writing is beautiful, it's eloquent and elegant, and it feels Victorian. The atmosphere is so vivid and oppressive and claustrophobic and gorgeous. The characters are interesting and flawed and unreliable and just really attractive in their own way. What else? The themes are very well explored, and it's an incredibly interesting book. It has an incredibly strong, effective premise, and I think technically as a book, it's great. And I probably would have given it like 4.5 stars, but I decided to give this book 5 stars, and it's my favorite book of the year so far by miles, because it was such an intense and such an interesting and such a different reading experience for me. It's very rare for me to feel like a book is kind of infusing me with something extra. I don't know what to I don't know how to explain what I am feeling and what I have in mind. But yeah, this book kind of put me in a trance. It's very weird. I absolutely adored this book. It's 5 out of 5 stars. It's just an amazing book. And if you haven't read it, it's never too late. Now, the next book that I read was The Trouble with Goats and Sheep by Joanna Cannon. This follows the story of these two little girls, and they are growing up in the 70s, I believe, in England. And they live in the suburbs, and it's a very British kind of story. It just feels very British, and I feel like for readers who are British or who have contact with England, that would resonate a lot with them. So for me, that wasn't the case, but still, I really liked the atmosphere. I really liked the Britishness of it all, and how it really feels like it's very much set in its own time and place. However, that was pretty much it for me. I didn't really like this book. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was fine, honestly. I think this is a perfectly fine book. Maybe I just didn't really think that much of it because I read it immediately after having finished The Secret History, and after having read so many great books, that this one just kind of fell a little bit flat for me. The story was kind of interesting. There's kind of a mystery in here. By the way, I'm saying the phrase kind of way too many times. Okay, so there is a sort of mystery here, and it is fairly intriguing and interesting, but that's pretty much it. It's just a fine novel. I would not necessarily recommend it. There's also a lot of exploration of themes that are kind of religious, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I did feel that sometimes this book was a little bit preachy and a little bit in your face. Like, oh, I see what you're doing there, Miss Joanna Cannon. I know what you're doing. I know what you want me to get out or take away from reading this. I don't have a problem with that necessarily, but yeah, I just thought it was okay. 3 stars, yeah, just okay, I guess. And then I read 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, whose original title is Cien Años de Soledad. And this is a book that I feel so proud of finally having read this. This is a book that I was intimidated by for as long as I can remember. It's a book that has been sitting in my shelf for ages, ever since I was in like elementary school, years and years ago. And I finally read it, and I didn't find it as intimidating as I thought it was going to be. However, it is a complicated novel. It doesn't really read like a novel. It really read more like a book of mythology and fairy tales, and yeah, just like a collection of myths. And also it read like a history book. So it was kind of a weird experience. It was, for the most part, very enjoyable. It was incredibly funny and incredibly sad as well. Very, very sad, very tragic, but also very warm and colorful and vivid. And you know what? While I was reading this book, I was constantly reminded of The Never-Ending Story, which is my favorite book of all time, because that book, The Never-Ending Story, has the same thing, in which every chapter feels like it could be a separate short story, or like it could have its own world or its own universe. It's like discovering a new part of this world created by this author. And the same thing happened with 100 Years of Solitude. It feels like you're reading, well, it doesn't feel, it actually is. You are reading these chapters of what's happening in the history of this family and its family members. And we also follow the town in which they have settled down, which is the town of Macondo in South America, probably in Colombia. And we follow this land as it evolves and as it goes through time, and there is conflict, there is war, there is political intrigue, there's colonization. There's a bunch of themes and ideas that the author explores masterfully, and I really like that. I also really enjoyed the use of magical realism, which is something that I also mentioned in my review, so I'm not going to delve deeper into that. Just go and check out my review if you're interested. I also really liked how this book had some images and some scenes that are absolutely imprinted in my brain and will be there forever. There are a couple of images that really stood out and really provoked me as a reader, and that really traumatized me in a good way. Yeah. And I will have to say that there came a point in which the novel for me was getting a little bit too long and a little bit too dry and a little bit too historical feeling and a little bit too boring. Not boring like a boring book in a bad kind of way, but it was getting a little bit too dense, and I was like, okay, let's get through this. Let's get through this. And then the ending of the book is so wonderful and so masterful that everything else, all the sorrow and suffering that you've had to endure for the past 400 pages, just makes sense. And not only does it make sense, it shines, and it makes you glad that you endured and that you read it and that you lived the experience. This is probably one of the best endings that I have ever read in my life. It really kept me thinking. It left me sort of in a weird confusional state of mind for a long time, and it's something that I'm still thinking about. So in the end, this is such a classic that you really do have to read at some point in your life. At least I would recommend you to read it. I gave it 4 stars. I didn't give it a higher rating because regardless of how amazing the book is, it wasn't a perfect reading experience for me. It sort of dragged, it was kind of dry, and I am the type of reader who does need to be entertained and to feel joy, and this book did that, but not always. So that's why I gave it 4 stars. but I absolutely adore it, and I think it's a book that I will grow fonder and fonder of over the years. So that's it. Those are books numbers 12, 13, and 14 that I've read so far in 2018. Please leave your comments down below so we can have a conversation or discussion. I am just one reader. Thank you very much for watching.